Hello everyone, it's Space Chaser again. Welcome to another model review video, and this time I'm going to do the EFE Alexander bodied double-decker, the Leyland Atlantean and the Daimler Fleetline. Now, as you know, I like to be comprehensive in these reviews, so what I was going to do was do a review of this Fleetline. I bought this to do as a Code 3. I'm going to change the names on it from Midland Red to East Yorkshire and make it one of my East Yorkshire collection. But there were several variations of the casting, as you would expect from EFE. There was the Daimler Fleetline and Leyland Atlantean, there was the early style front end and the later style front end, and there was the flush rear and the one with the sticking out engine bustle. Now the Fleetline has got a late front end and a sticking out engine bustle, and it wouldn't have been a very comprehensive review, so I bought a second model, the Edinburgh Leyland Atlantean, which has got the early front and the flush rear, and as I say, it's an Atlantean and not a Fleetline, so we can see the main variations of the casting. There was a third version, which was the early front with twin headlights, and we haven't got one of those, but I'll explain what they look like when I do the Edinburgh one. So the EFE Alexander body double-decker is one of those models that you think is quite ubiquitous, but there haven't actually been as many produced as you might think. The Atlantean came first. It was introduced in July of 1997. There were 15 variations of it made between then and July of 2015. 4 of those had the early front and the flush rear, 5 had the early front and the sticking out engine bustle, 2 had the early front, the twin headlights and the flush rear, 2 had the early front, the twin headlights and the engine bustle, and then just 2 had the late front and the engine bustle. The Fleetline followed a month later. It came into production in August 1997, and there were 20 variants of that between then and August 2018. The 2018 ones would have been produced by Bachmann after they'd bought EFE in 2016. But I suspect they weren't new productions. There would have been ones that were in the warehouse and just sent out. And of the Fleetlines, there've been 2 with late front and flush rear. There have been 10 variants with the early front and the engine bustle, 5 variants with the late front and the engine bustle, and 3 variants with the early front and the flush rear. There have been no twin headlight Fleetlines, as far as I'm aware, produced so far. So the ones we've got to review are model 23501, the Atlantean in delivery of Edinburgh Corporation. As I said earlier on, that was one of the first releases, July 1997. And then we've also got 24201 SB, the Midland Red North Daimler Fleetline, released in September 1997. There was a standard release, 24201, which didn't have the adverts on, but 24201 SB, as you can see, was that year's Showbus special model. And unusually for an EFE, because it was a special edition, it's got a limited edition certificate on it as well. So it's, this one is model 1890. Of 2,670 that were produced for the Showbus event. So it's got the Showbus posters, and other than that, it's the standard model. It's the same registration and fleet number and decor. It's just got these posters put on it. The standard release didn't have the posters, basically. So the real body was introduced by Walter Alexander coach builders in the 1960s, and they were produced up to 1972. On the Atlantean, it was officially known as the A-type, and on the Fleetline, the J-type, but people did get confused. I've seen pictures of Atlanteans that claim they're carrying a J-type body. There was also a K-type variant of the Fleetline, which looked the same, but it was built for Yorkshire woolen. I'm not entirely sure what the actual difference was. It looks, as I say, the same at first glance. The Atlantean, the A-type body on the Atlantean was introduced in 1964. The J-type on the Fleetline in 1966, and both continued until 1972, when they were replaced by a slightly updated version, which was known as the D-type on the Fleetline and the L-type on the Atlantean, although they were both done as the AL and AD, A standing for aluminium. They started to make the bodies out of aluminium in those days. So yeah, they were in production in the 1960s up to 1972. The later AD and AL bodies do look similar, but they're not quite the same. They're a little bit more square and they're not quite as rounded. But I have seen these models converted to represent the later AD and AL types. Indeed, I've done a few of them myself, and they're pretty close. The main difference is that the AD and the AL had equal depth windows on both decks, whereas you can see on these the lower deck windows are deeper than the upper deck ones. So what we'll do, we'll take them out of the box. I'll run through the history of the rail vehicles modelled very quickly, and then we'll have a good look round the Fleetline. I'll show you everything on it, and then we'll have a quick look round the Atlantean, see the differences on that one, and then we'll talk about price. But yeah, standard EFE box is just a cardboard outer, just open the end there, and a plastic inner tray which just lifts like that to reveal the model. So the Atlantean is a model of vehicle EWS 812D. I don't know if you can see that on the video. Just try and get some light onto it. New as Edinburgh Corporation, fleet number 812 in October 1966. It passed with the Edinburgh operations to Lothian Regional Transport in the early 1970s. It worked in Edinburgh for its entire service life, as far as I'm aware, and it entered preservation. As far as I'm aware, it's preserved at the Scottish Vintage Bus Museum at Lothian near Perth. But it's still preserved today, it's still with us, and very much in the condition that you see it in, modelled by EFE. The Fleetline is DRC 543J. That was new to Trent in March 1971 as fleet number 543. In 1981 it passed to Midland Red North as fleet number 2543, and it's modelled as the Midland Red bus here. Midland Red did have a lot of Alexander bodied Fleetlines that they bought new, however theirs had flat glass in the upper deck front and the windscreen. Both of those were flat glass, so they were different to the normal Alexander body, and therefore EFE have chosen to go with a second-hand one in the Midland Red fleet, because that bus did have the rounded windscreens that you see on the model. Midland Red North ran it for about 5 years. It was sold to Ribble in 1986. It worked very briefly for Ribble, and then it passed to Stevenson's of Spaff, the well-known independent from the Midlands. They didn't use it in service. They cut the front part of the upper deck off and made it into a tree lopper. So it was the front bit here was cut to about there. So the whole upper deck window pillars and roof were taken off. Some safety railings put in. Bizarrely, the back part of the upper deck was left in position, so it looked very, very strange indeed. And then after Stevenson's used it as a tree lopper for a few years, it was scrapped as far as I'm aware. So we'll have a look around, and as always we start with the front end. The front dome looks very good. The rounded appearance of the Alexander front dome well captured. The upper deck front window is a little bit flat. It should be a little bit curvier. It is a model of the curved screen, not the flat screens, but it does look a little bit flat in this setting. A famous fact, which some people have disputed actually, was that the upper deck front window from this was the same as the lower deck rear window. Well, lower deck, it was a single decker, but the same as the rear window on the Alexander Y-type single decker, that it would fit into that. And the EFE one does. If you've got an Alexander Y-type EFE model, you can interchange this upper deck front window with the rear window of that Y-type single decker. I'm not quite sure why you want to do it, but if you're bored one Tuesday, for example, it's something you could do. Just swap the windows over; they will fit. The between decks panelling, not much to report on it really. The destination blind, as you would expect, is printed on, so they can do different variations. These buses were new in the era when operators still specified their own style of destination equipment, so there were wide variations. Just try and get some more light on it. Sorry, the lighting I thought would be better this morning, but it obviously isn't. I don't know if you can see on the video, there is some paint bubbling taking place on the model there, and you can see a bit on the offside as well. The Edinburgh one seems to be, sorry, offside, the near side should I say. On the side there, the Edinburgh one seems to be suffering from it as well. It is a problem that some EFEs suffer from. Not all of the releases will have it, not all of the models in the same release. So if you've got another one of these showbus ones, it probably will be perfect. But it's just something to bear in mind if you're buying one for your display case, that you might get a little bit of this paint rash, as it's known. The paint starts to bubble. There's not much you can do with it. All you can do is sand it off and repaint the area affected. Just try and colour match the paint. The windscreen looks pretty decent. It curves in both planes as it should, vertically and horizontally. The wipers are moulded onto it, but they stick out. There's some relief to them, and they're picked out in black, which is a nice feature. And the lower panel is well done. This is the later style one, as we said, with this moulding around the headlights and the grille in the middle there. That is how I remember my Alexander bodied Fleetlines and Atlanteans. That's the ones East Yorkshire had when I was a kid. That style of front end, and it looks very, very good indeed. Blacks around to the fog lights to make them look like they're in the hole that they would be in real life. Very good. The little holes there, which I believe are the towing eyes, yeah, very nicely done. And the registration plate printed very well there. 4-leaf door on this one, I believe that is correct for this bus. Some of the EFE releases have got a little bit of a cross pillar painted onto the glazing unit to make, so you've got like 8 windows rather than on each door. I'm not explaining this very well, am I? So you've got 8 windows on the doors rather than just 4, but this one is correct for the later style, that it's got 4 windows there. Indicator moulded onto the casting there. Some of the buses later on did actually have it down here. They had a square one sort of in this kind of area. But general impression is pretty good. The opening windows are just moulded onto the glazing. They're not picked out in a relief colour. That's something you could do if you're feeling active. But yeah, the general proportions of it are pretty good. The deeper lower deck windows, as I say, as should be modelled. The wheels look pretty decent as well. One slightly jarring note on this model, which always annoys me a little bit, I'll just try and get some more light on it, is the lifeguard underneath. I'll just tap it with a light so you can see what I mean. Some of the earlier buses probably had it on a lot. Most of the later ones didn't, but they're fairly easy to cut off. You just get a sharp knife and just cut the vertical supports there, and it will come off, and it does improve the appearance of it. Obviously have a look at the photos of your prototype vehicle first to see if it had it on or not, but yeah, it just, a lot of them didn't, and it looks a little bit archaic, to be honest. The rear dome isn't quite rounded enough. It looks a little bit too square on this model, which is a shame. Not much you can do with that really, and the engine bustle is reasonable. You know, the detailing is there. You've got the raised panel there. If I go around the back, it looks quite good actually. You've got this bumper, the moulded lines across there. That looks pretty decent. The lights look all right. There's no reversing light on this one, so it presumably the rail vehicle was specified as a conductor operated bus new, and if it needed to reverse, the conductor would just give the driver hand signals. Later on in life, no doubt it would have received some reversing lights on the cluster, so again, something to look at. Single piece lower deck rear window on this. Some of them are modelled with a split window by, again, just printing the pillar onto the glazing unit, but this one I believe correct for the application. Another slightly jarring note of this model is that all of them have the split upper deck rear window, the emergency exit window. A lot of the buses in real life didn't. They had a single piece one, but to modify that, you've got to cut that pillar out, which is not hard to do. The only thing is then the glazing won't fit, the back window won't fit in because it's moulded to fit in these little apertures. So you need to, if you do cut that pillar out, just replace the window with a bit of clear plastic. Again, it's not a hard job. It's just one of those annoying little jobs that you know, comes up that shouldn't necessarily need doing. Again, the dome looks a little bit square. It's not quite as rounded as the rail thing would be, but it's not too bad. It looks kind of generally like it should do. Round to the offside, you've got the grille there for the engine, the radiator grille, should I say. Nicely done. There's a nice bit of detail in there and picked out in black, which is good to see. The grille up there is printed on, so some buses wouldn't have had it, so they can omit it if they need to. Emergency door looks decent. Nice bit of detail in there. The handle recessed and you know, moulded on as it should be. Fuel filler, all that kind of thing there. Again, the indicators up there. Some of them, again, had it slightly lower down, a square one lower down, some of the later buses. And again, the lifeguard is present, but, you know, just have a look, as I say, at photographs of the bus you're modelling and see if the one that you're modelling had it on or not. If not, just cut it off. It's quite easy. The roof, you've got the panel lines nicely modelled. You've got these vents up here above the front part. Again, nicely modelled. And you've got these bits, which would be sort of opaque skylights. Not all buses had them. This one presumably didn't, so just painted in body colour. On some releases they did have them, they'd just be picked out in a kind of silver or grey colour. They weren't generally see-through on these buses, like I said, they were opaque. They just kind of added a bit more light to the upper deck without letting the full sun in. Look at the chassis, the fairly basic detail that you would expect on an EFE. You've got some tanks there, some air tanks, the fuel tanks there. You've got the basic chassis members and things, and a little bit of a suggestion of the suspension system and the exhaust, but not much going on really. And the interior, as always for an EFE, pretty nicely moulded and detailed actually, but all done in one colour, so it would benefit from taking the bus apart and painting it to bring the detailing out. Interior of this one modelled in red, which is probably just about right. I think Trent did use a red interior, bearing in mind that the bus, although it's modelled in Midland red condition, was new to Trent, as I said earlier on. But yeah, it's all in all, it's not a bad model, it's pretty decent. We'll have a quick look at the Atlantean, just see the differences. So this one's got the earlier style front end, as we said, destination blind printed on, so this one's got the archetypal Edinburgh blind. 3 parts, the intermediate blind up there, the ultimate destination there, and a number 1 next to it. You can see the earlier style front end without the moulding across the headlights. I don't really remember these in real life. I would have seen them, but I don't particularly remember them. And I always prefer the later front end, but you know, each to their own. Some people probably prefer the earlier one. As I said, there was another variation of the EFE model that had twin headlights, but I haven't got one of those. It's just the same front end as this, just there's 2 headlights the same size, and the side lights are moved to a different position basically. EFE, despite the fact they went to all the effort of doing different castings, they didn't always get it 100% right. This bus in real life had 2-leaf doors, not 4-leaf. You could easily modify it, cut the pillars out that you don't need in the doors, and you would have to cut the glazing unit and replace the door glazing, because again it fits into the apertures, so you just have to replace that with a bit of clear plastic. But again, it's not a problem to do. You can see possibly, if I just hold the light on it, it's very difficult because it's a maroon bus. Again, you can see the paint rash there. What looks like a fingerprint on the side is actually paint rash. It's starting to bubble up. Again, just sand it off carefully and give it a coat of new paint. Humbrol Maroon's pretty close to the actual livery colour of this one. But yeah, again, all in all, looks quite good. The flush rear is achieved by putting these little bits in, as far as I know. But it's got an Atlantean bustle there, so you've got no raised bit on the side of it, unlike the Fleetline. And the back of it is different, as it should be. It is, of course, a PDR Atlantean. If you're doing a later AN68, it's not quite right for that, but, you know, modeller's license kind of thing if you do convert one of these into a later bus. Again, you've got the split window upstairs. I don't know if this bus had a split window. I think it possibly did. And the single piece one downstairs. But it all looks pretty decent. Again, the radiator grille on the offside there. But yeah, not much to say about it really. It's not that different to the Fleetline. Obviously, it is different. It's got the Atlantean bustle, the flush rear end, and the earlier front. But other than that, it's pretty much the same model. And the interior on this one done in maroon, which again will be right for Edinburgh. The seats will be maroon, although the back of them I think should be grey. So again, you could take it apart and paint it and just bring out the detailing. But all in all, they are nice models. They they're not 100%, as I said. You know, the front screen's a bit flat for a start, but you know, they look pretty much like they should do. They look nice from a normal viewing distance. They are close enough. So how much one of these fine machines cost you to add to your collection? Well, I'm doing this video in early March 2025. I've had a look on eBay for the purposes of the video. Of the Atlanteans, the cheapest one I could find was £16.32 plus £2.94 postage and packing, so that's £19.26 all in. The prices on eBay getting a little bit more bizarre because they've put buyer's fees on basically, so they add a random amount of pence to whatever the seller has put it on for. So I'm guessing that bus was probably on for something like £15.50, a bit more sensible, and they've added 82p to it, so it's £16.32 plus, you know, £2.94. As I say, £19.26. The most expensive Atlantean I could find was £29.99, including postage. So somewhere between £19 and £30 for the Atlantean. The Fleetline started slightly cheaper, or quite a bit cheaper actually, and went more expensive. The cheapest Fleetline I could find was £12.68, including postage and packing, but that was the Hong Kong City Bus version with the big sort of full depth sliding windows on it. So you'd probably have to replace the windows if you're doing the UK prototype with that one. But yeah, £12.68 including postage. And the most expensive was £53.29. That was the Maidstone and District version, which is quite collectible. The National Bus Company green one with the big fleet number across the front dome there. But yeah, just over £12 to just over 53. So, you know, that's the kind of price range for the Fleetline. Bit of balance. I looked at the Ellis-Keith website, the one in Eastbourne. It's got an online website as well. The Fleetline, anywhere between £8, that was again the Hong Kong City Bus one, and £20, which was the East Yorkshire one in the dark blue livery. Postage on top of that, about a £5, I believe, from Ellis-Keith, so looking between £13 and £25 for a Fleetline. The Atlantean, slightly more expensive again, between £18 and £28. Again, postage would be on top of that, so you're looking at £23 to £33 for an Atlantean from Ellis-Keith. It is worth getting them. A lot of operators had these buses in various different guises. EFE have modelled quite a few of them, but there's plenty to go at if you do Code 3 repaints as well. You know, quite a lot of operators that weren't represented on the EFE models had them as well. So you could easily get one to repaint. They, as I said, not 100%. It's not a spot-on accurate model, but it's not far off by any means. So they are worth getting. They continued into service, particularly with the late fronts, into the mid to late 80s. The ones East Yorkshire had that I mentioned that I grew up with as a kid, they had some 1970 buses. I think the last of them were withdrawn in about 1988, 89. So, you know, you've got plenty of scope to operate them. And as I say, this one in real life is in preservation, so it's still around today. So even if you're modelling the current scene, you could get one of these and just put it, you know, as a preserved vehicle on your layout or your diorama. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.